Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, as you all know, I'm passionate about using technology to bring people together and solve real problems and ultimately make a difference. And yes, I cover shiny new tech solutions, but recently I've been increasingly wanting to step up and use this platform to try and help people who are going through an incredibly tough time at the moment. And for everyone listening, I'm conscious that could be you. And in this period of uncertainty, there are millions of people all over the world who could be about to lose their job or have already heard that they've lost their job. And that means that millions of people who have not looked at their resume, not edited their LinkedIn profile, and have not been to a job interview in years. And not only that, they're going to be forced to apply for job roles at a time where hundreds of applicants will all be fighting for that same role. And that means that businesses will be using things like AI tools to pick only the best applicants based on how your resume is formatted. And that is before it even reaches a human being. So Lynda Spiegel is a professional resume writer whose 14 years as a global human resources executive means she knows how your resume will be viewed by recruiters and hiring managers, and has many behind-the-scenes insights that can help improve your chances for getting an interview. And as a recruiter, she's posted jobs on LinkedIn, so she knows how to write a LinkedIn profile too that will improve your chances of being found by those target employers or those headhunters, all by helping you articulate your professional brand and the specific accomplishments that set you apart from everybody else out there. And she's also worked in the financial services, telecom and with SaaS companies, and has recruited for positions in IT, legal, financial, sales, marketing, public relations, media, project management and customer service, and the list goes on. But she's also a frequent writer and speaker on the job search and networking skills, and also a member of the Wall Street Journal's experts panel. And what I'm trying to say here is she knows her stuff and knows how to make sure that applicants can stand out in a world of AI application tracking systems. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to New York so we can speak with Lynda Spiegel from Rising Star Resumes right now. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Lynda. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I'm Lynda Spiegel, and I was a global human resources executive for many years. I started Rising Star Resumes because I could see that most people didn't understand the audience for their resumes, and so they weren't writing it as effectively as they might have.
Now, we will have people listening all over the world that are very concerned about their job security, and many people have not looked at their LinkedIn profile in many years. So I'm curious, are you getting bombarded with concerned emails from professionals at the moment that want to work extra hard to stand out from the crowd, or are you quiet? What's going on with you right now?
Well, I'm getting a lot of inquiries from people who are just very massively concerned, and they want some advice, And the one thing and you hit on the right word there, with so many more candidates in the pool per open position, you need to differentiate yourself. So there are a million software developers or coders. There are thousands and thousands of marketing executives and financial executives, but how do you differentiate yourself from all the other people who do it, whose job description is exactly the same as yours?
And so we don't confuse everyone listening at home, I need your help in clearing something up for me here. Here I am locked down in the UK, and we call it CV, curriculum vitae, and over there in the US you say resume. But I've got to ask, is there a difference?
There's a huge difference. And the difference is, and this is happening in Europe as well, it's been a slower progression, but a CV is now used primarily for academics, so people who've published. There are other things that come into play. So a CV is so comprehensive But in the US, it violates a million privacy laws. So in the US, you do not put your photograph on your resume, ever, ever.
Wow.
On a CV, you do. You put personal information on your CV. In the US, that would be an HR person's nightmare, because you could be accused of being discriminating, being discriminatory if someone has personal things on their resume. So you want to keep that off. CVs are starting to lose their impact in Europe as well and elsewhere in the world, because there's too much to digest. So unless you're an academic and you want to show all the publications that you've written, I would just say go with a resume, and go with a resume that focuses more on your accomplishments than on your functions.
Now, you have over 14 years of experience recruiting and hiring thousands of talented individuals and founded rising star resumes to leverage your background. But can I ask that you share your story and give your own unique perspective on which resumes will actually get read by recruiters? Because we've all seen those big pile of A4 Word documents that have been printed out that all look exactly the same. So are there any tips you can offer on that?
Yeah, a couple. So one thing, don't PDF your resume when you're going to click and upload it, because when you're clicking on, click here to upload your resume and cover letter, it's being read by applicant tracking system software. And most of those softwares can't read a PDF document. And besides that, the ATS software is going to completely deconstruct and parse your resume into its own little format. So there's absolutely no reason to do that. The other thing is, don't use headers and footers for the same reason. Most applicant tracking system software won't read the header and footer, which renders your resume anonymous. Right?
And what about the creative resumes now? Because there's more and more of those in certain industries, isn't there, which would be PDFs?
Well, it's interesting. When I get clients who are in the creative field rather than the corporate field, although the bulk of my clients are in the corporate arena, we get into this kind of frisson, where they say, well, Lynda, but I'm being hired for my creative chops, and you're just using a simple Word document. And I said, that's right, because you can put links in the resume to your online portfolio, which you should be doing anyway, but the resume itself should be a simple Word document that we know can pass through the ATS. Anything that's heavily formatted won't be. And the more visually beautiful your resume is, the less likely it is that it's going to be read. So I've come up with this compromise for my creative clients. I write the content and I put it in a simple Word document. And if they're going to click to upload their resume, fine. That's what I want them to use. But then they can take what I've written and put it into whatever beautiful design they like if they're going to directly email their resume to a hiring manager.
Fantastic. I love that compromise. But for anyone listening that has said, I need to visit my resume now, what is the first thing that they should do? And it's ultimately as well, what should they avoid doing?
They should avoid using hackneyed phrases that everybody else uses, like results driven. Have you ever met anybody who was the opposite of results driven? I really like to fail. That's what I'm all about. Or did you ever meet anyone who wasn't a team player? And I have yet to meet someone who wasn't skilled at verbal and written communication, even though, quite frankly, they're not. So I would avoid those kind of hackneyed phrases. And what I would do instead is curate a list of, 5 to 8 very, very specific accomplishments. Get very granular. So there was a problem. This is what you did. This is the outcome of what you did. So give employers an idea of things that you've actually done, but get very specific. You don't have to go into excruciating detail. I mean, you don't want to give away the secret sauce of what you did, but you want to give them enough so that an employer can say, oh, wow, I want to bring this person in for an interview to learn more. Because that's the goal of your resume, to get yourself an interview.
And I'm so relieved you said that, because the job market is going to get more competitive than ever before. And every resume can run the risk of looking the same and contain those soulless buzzwords such as passionate, proactive, team player. But
Cutting edge. Oh, and by the way, everybody innovated. Everybody innovated.
So what is the secret to getting read by recruiters?
Okay, very good. So you have to be the answer to the problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when I was hiring people, when I was on the other side of the of the fence, the desk, I should say, I had hiring managers from every department: marketing, IT, finance, legal. They were all coming up to me with, "Oh, Lynda, I have this open rec. Go find me some great candidates." And I would help them work on what the open rec was. So I understood what they were looking for. And the last thing I wanted to do was read some random resume that somebody just like, oh, I think I'll just apply for everything with my job title in it. And I want to see a resume, and even more so than now, because there are going to be so many more resumes for every position. So for heaven's sakes, be the answer to the recruiter's problem. Be the person who actually matches that job description. So that means do not apply to everything in sight. Apply to jobs where you reasonably have at least 75% of what they're looking for, and then make the case at the very top of the resume further. And by the way, when I say don't apply for everything, it's because I want you to spend some time networking with your second-degree connections on LinkedIn, because people who have another human being advocating for them or forwarding their resume internally are much more likely to get hired.
Couldn't agree more. And those other human beings, that is the heart of everything. And you've already mentioned about not uploading PDFs, but how else can candidates avoid the pitfalls of those dreaded AI recruitment tools that are on the lookout for certain things? Is there anything you can advise around that?
Yeah, I mean, they're not going anywhere. They're an evil that many companies feel the need to have because, they frankly too lazy to read resumes themselves like I used to do. But no, I mean, the thing is you need to click to upload them. And yes, your resume should, have the keywords and not be PDF'd. And, you should work with a resume writer who understands that you don't put the dates on the left side of the page. They go on the, there are certain things you need to know about ATS. So I wouldn't be foolish and not make your resume ATS proof. But the better way to get hired is after you've clicked to upload, go to LinkedIn, put the company name, the name of the company where you're applying for this job, put the company name in the search bar, click on people who work at company name, and then go through to see if you have any second-degree connections. If so, you want to get in touch with those people. If not, or in addition to, look for the person who you think might be the hiring manager and get in touch with that person directly. And you put a couple of, compelling bullets in the body of the email. Don't write a whole long thing because nobody wants to read your whole long story. Just put a couple of compelling reasons in the body of the email why the hiring manager wants to read your resume.
And then next up, of course, is LinkedIn. So I think we've both chatted very often over the years about what not to do on LinkedIn. But what are the common mistakes that you see, and how can listeners ensure that their LinkedIn profile stands out from the crowd, and also that they don't spam people as well?
Oh God, yeah. Spamming people is just rude. And so there are a couple of things. Let's stay with rude for a moment. Okay, a lot of people feel like, well, if I'm reaching out to a second-degree connection and saying, do me a solid and please, we don't know each other, we're connected through Neil or through Lynda, can you get my resume in front of the hiring manager, that looks like you're being, you're just being rude. You're asking for something from somebody when you haven't done anything for them. And I think there are respectful ways to ask. But remember, if somebody who's your secondary connection takes a quick look at your resume and says, yeah, I'm not embarrassed to forward this person's resume to the hiring manager, most companies will provide that person, if you get hired, will give them an incentive bonus. So, people are usually willing to do that. The other thing, and getting back to what you should and shouldn't do on your profile, I would say 95% of the universe on LinkedIn has their current title and their company name in the headline. Or even worse, open to new opportunities. Both are really, really poor strategies. So to have your title and your employer in the headline means that if you want the search engine optimization for your profile to work, you need to have that headline be keyword rich. So when I was hiring people, and I used LinkedIn to hire for almost every position because I was global. I was based in New York City, but I had an office in London. I was hiring in many different countries. So, I needed a global place, to put jobs, right? So if I was looking for a passive candidate, there was a period when it was hard to find UI UX designers. I mean, we're only going back to 2011, but they were rarer than hen's teeth in New York City. I needed them because I worked for a SaaS company, right? We needed a UI UX designer because we were on mobile devices. And I just kept putting in search terms into LinkedIn, UI UX designer NYC, or permutations on that. And then I would just start, people's profiles would come up, and then I just go after those people as passive candidates. Now, there aren't going to be a lot of passive candidates in this pandemic environment. There are going to be a lot of desperate candidates in this environment. So you want to make sure that your profile comes up on page one. It's not Google, but you want your SEO to be really robust on LinkedIn. So use that 120 character limitation for your headline to actually talk about what it is you do. You want to come up on search. And do not stay open to new opportunities.
Well, assuming that your resume then has beaten those AI robots and the LinkedIn profile shines and attracts those headhunters and helps you secure the elusive job interview, can you offer any practical advice on those real life interview traumas that we've all experienced at some stage? But is there anything you can advise around there?
Sure. I think the thing to do is there's been so much written about interviewing, and our mutual friend, Sarah Elkins, actually, I've referred some of my clients to her for really in-depth advice on how to tell your story, your career story. So I think once you're in an interview, approach it with, I call it taking a Zen approach to interviewing. There are, and now more than ever, a lot of very qualified people who are being interviewed for this position. And if you're on the short list, if you're being interviewed, you're qualified, and so is everyone else they're interviewing. So don't be so invested, I have to get this job. Just approach it as you're having a conversation with somebody in the same field who has the same interests, and just talk about what the company needs. Don't talk about yourself so much. Talk about what the company needs and how, and tie it into what you've done and show your value, show your value proposition. But to avoid feeling desperate or like, I got to get this job, I really need this job, just realize only one person's going to get it, and it might not be you. So just accept that fact going in. It will calm you down a great deal. And, it's kind of overused to say be authentic. We're all sick of hearing that, but be authentic. Don't try to be someone you're not.
And if anyone listening out there would like just a little bit of guidance or help with their resume, LinkedIn profile, interview preparation, or job search advice, what is the best way to find you online and connect with you, Lynda?
Sure. I would go to my website because there's a lot there, a lot of free information there. There are samples of my work, a description of my process. So the URL is risingstarresumes.net. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn at Rising Star Resumes.
Excellent. Well, I'll have all those links to the blog post that will accompany this podcast episode. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today. And one of the things that really stands out there is it's not about you. When you go into a job interview, you make it all about you. That's why you're so nervous. But like you said, the answer, of course, is being the solution to their problem.
Always remember that.
So it really is. So a big thank you, Lynda, for taking the time to come and share your story with me today.
Thank you so much, Neil.
Wow, I cannot thank Lynda enough for coming on today. And I hope you found her advice valuable. I mean, avoiding PDFs, avoiding headers and footers. And remember, it's not about you. It's about you being the solution to the recruiter's problem. But this is the moment where I pass the virtual microphone over to you listening. Do you have any tips that you would like to pass on to everybody? Please, I want to hear from you because this is a time where we all need to pull together. So please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. And that's where you'll find over 1,200 interviews and links to my social channels, how you can work with me, and maybe a few little bonuses as well. But that's it for today's episode. So a big thank you to Lynda for coming on the podcast. Even bigger thank you to each and every one of you for listening. I'll see you all bright and early again tomorrow. But until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.